Hello everyone, welcome to Get Snoozy, where you relax, you listen, you sleep. Today, we bring you a collection of stories that will tear open the wounds stitched beneath our smiles. Luke had always been the quiet kind of kid. He lived in the small town of Oak Ridge, Illinois, where the air smelled like fresh-cut grass in the summer and old fireplaces in the winter. His house was nothing fancy, just a simple 2-story home with creaky steps and a big oak tree out front. Luke spent most of his days alone. He liked drawing in the dirt with sticks, reading comic books under the porch, and racing his toy cars down the sidewalk. He was an only child, and though his parents loved him, they both worked long hours. So, for the most part, the world was quiet around him. Until one day. It was spring, the sun was out, and Luke was sitting on the porch when a big white moving truck rolled up next door. He watched with curious eyes as boxes were carried in and furniture was moved around. Then he saw her. She was his age, maybe a little younger, with tangled brown hair and a bright green dress that danced in the wind. She was helping her mom carry a plant when she noticed him staring. She didn't just wave. She smiled like she'd known him forever, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Luke, surprised, then slowly, he raised his hand and waved. That was all it took. From that day on, they were side by side, whether it was biking down the street, climbing trees, or building pillow forts in the living room. They did everything together. Luke didn't know it yet, but Emma had just changed his life forever. And so began the kind of friendship that grows into something much deeper. By the time Luke and Emma turned 10, the neighbors had started calling them the little old couple. They were always together, walking home from school or playing tag in the yard. They didn't need fancy toys or big adventures, just each other. They balanced each other like two halves of the same story. Middle school came and went. Their bond never wavered. By the time they were 16, things had changed, but only slightly. Emma had freckles on her cheeks, and Luke had started to grow taller. Their hands brushed sometimes when they walked, but they never talked about it. They didn't have to. Then came that night by the lake. The stars were out. Crickets chirped in the grass. They had just finished high school, and Luke stared at the water for a long time before saying, "I don't know where life's gonna take me, but I know I want you with me someday." Emma didn't laugh or tease him. She just looked at him, really looked, and said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait, no matter how long." From that moment on, the word future had a face for Luke, and that face was hers. College separated them, but only by miles, not by heart. Luke went to a university in Chicago, chasing a degree in business. Emma stayed closer to home, taking classes at the local community college while working at the town bakery. Even though they weren't in the same town anymore, they never felt far from each other. Every night, they texted goodnight. Every weekend, they video called, even if it was just to watch a movie at the same time or to fall asleep on the call together. They sent letters too, real ones. Luke's were neat and careful, with doodles in the margins. Emma's were full of smudged hearts and flower stickers. They kept every single one. After graduation, Luke landed his first job in Indianapolis. It wasn't flashy, just a junior accounting position at a small firm. But to him, it meant progress, stability, a future. He found a one-bedroom apartment on a quiet street near a small park. The place was old. Every evening after work, he fixed it up little by little. He painted the kitchen walls pale blue because Emma once said it reminded her of summer skies. He bought 2 coffee mugs with tiny matching suns on them, 2 toothbrushes, a calendar with their names written on random dates, movie night, first kiss anniversary, sushi Friday. He hung soft curtains. He even started growing a small flower box on the windowsill, the way Emma always dreamed of. Every piece of that apartment was built for 2. He called her one night, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Almost ready," he said, smiling. "Just a few more touches, then it's your home too." Emma's voice was quiet, full of love. "I can't wait, Luke. I really can't." And neither could he. It was a Friday night. Rain tapped gently against the windshield as Luke drove home from work, tired but content. He'd just bought new throw pillows for the couch, gold and navy, the colors Emma loved. The apartment was nearly done now. Just one weekend of work left, and it would be ready for her. He couldn't wait to call her when he got home, to ask what color curtains she wanted for the bedroom, but he never made it back that night. Just 10 minutes from home, a truck ran a red light at the intersection. It hit the driver's side of Luke's car hard, metal crunching, glass shattering, tires screaming. The world went dark. He opened his eyes 3 days later in a hospital bed, the ceiling above him blurry and cold. His body felt heavy, like he wasn't fully inside it. He thought of Emma. She's going to be so scared, he thought. She's probably already here. But when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was Josh, his best friend since freshman year of college. He walked in with a pale face, carrying takeout and a blanket. Luke tried to speak, his throat dry. "Where's Emma?" Josh sat beside him and took his hand, his voice shaking. "Luke, the doctors said the accident crushed both your legs. They couldn't save them. You're not going to walk again." Luke stared at him, waiting, not for the pain to sink in, but for Emma. "Okay, but she's coming, right?" he whispered. Josh looked down. "I've called, I've tried. She went back to her parents. She said she needed space. She hasn't come." Luke turned his face toward the window. Outside, the sky was still gray. Inside, something quietly broke. The days blurred together. Luke stayed in the hospital for 4 long months. 4 months of white walls, beeping machines, and cold breakfasts on metal trays. His body healed slowly, his heart even slower. Every morning, he waited for her. He watched the door like it might open at any second, and she'd come rushing in, crying, apologizing, holding him tight and saying, "I'm so sorry I took so long. I'm here now." But it never happened. Emma never came. Josh stayed by his side the whole time. He helped Luke through painful therapy sessions, pushed his wheelchair down hospital hallways, read him old letters when the nights got too quiet. Luke asked the same question over and over. "Did you talk to her? Did she say anything? Is she okay?" Josh would nod gently and say, "She's fine. She moved back to her parents' place. Maybe it's just too hard for her right now." Luke never got angry. He just nodded and looked away, whispering, "She promised she'd wait." At night, he dreamed of her, the way her laugh used to echo on their street, the way she'd braid little wildflowers into her hair and ask him if they looked pretty. In those dreams, she still loved him. One day, during therapy, Luke fell from the parallel bars and lay on the floor for a full minute before anyone picked him up. The nurse apologized, but Luke just said, "It's all right." No one answered that. He didn't cry, not once, but Josh saw the way he stared at the ceiling every night, like he was asking the stars what he did wrong. The apartment was still, too still, when Josh pushed Luke's wheelchair through the door for the first time in 4 months. The silence hit him like a cold wave. It was the same apartment Luke had worked so hard to make. Everything still in place, just as he left it. The soft blue walls, the flower box on the windowsill, the 2 coffee mugs, matching suns, one still waiting for her hand to hold it. Luke wheeled himself inside slowly, his gaze drifting over the space. He reached out and ran his fingers across the couch, then paused. Everything felt like it was waiting for something that would never come. There was a fresh, bitter emptiness in the air, the kind that only comes when someone you loved once so deeply stops showing up. She'll be here soon, Luke thought, as he stared at the empty chair across from him. Every morning, he still imagined her walking through the door. Her long hair would be pulled into a messy bun, her cheeks flushed from the cold, carrying a cup of coffee in one hand and a bag of pastries in the other. He imagined her smile, the smile that had always been for him. But she never came. Her cell phone number switched off. Slowly, the apartment filled with the kind of quiet that made his chest ache, the kind of quiet that wrapped around him day after day until he couldn't remember the last time he had really laughed, the last time they had been happy. Josh tried to help, hoping to bring some life back into the place, but it wasn't the same. He spent most of his time in his room, staring out the window at the street below. It felt like a distant memory, a dream he couldn't quite hold on to. Every night, Luke would close his eyes and pretend she was still out there, somewhere, that she still loved him, that they could still have a future together, even if he couldn't walk, even if everything had changed. He never stopped waiting. Maybe she's just scared, he'd whisper to Josh late at night. Maybe she's trying to figure things out, but she'll come back. She said forever. Josh never corrected him. He couldn't, because the truth would break what little was left of Luke's spirit. In Josh's coat pocket was the thing he wished he never received, a soft ivory envelope with gold lettering, an invitation to Emma's wedding, set for next weekend in a quiet white church in Bloomington. She was marrying someone else, someone who could walk, someone who could dance with her at their wedding. Josh couldn't bring himself to tell Luke. He couldn't be the one to crush that last spark of hope in his best friend's eyes. So he stayed quiet. He watched Luke fall asleep every night with that same line on his lips. She'll come back. She will. And then the day arrived. That morning, Luke didn't say much. He stared out the window, watching the soft rain hit the glass like it was whispering to him. The city looked gray, hollow, distant. "Josh," he said suddenly, "don't go today." Josh turned. "What?" "I don't know. Something about today feels heavy, like my chest is holding something it doesn't understand. His voice was thin, scared. Please stay. Josh's heart dropped, but he forced a smile. Just a quick errand. I'll be right back. He didn't know why he still went. Maybe a part of him needed to see if it was real, if Emma was really going through with it. Maybe he wanted it to be a mistake, wanted to come home and say, "She changed her mind, Luke. She still loves you." But what he saw when he arrived in Bloomington was no mistake. Emma was standing outside the church in a flowing white dress, her hand tightly holding someone else's. Her eyes sparkled, her laugh was soft, and her smile held no trace of the past. She looked happy, and Luke was nowhere in that happiness. Josh couldn't breathe. His throat closed, and tears blurred his vision. He turned and ran before the ceremony began. He had to get back. He had left Luke alone, and something deep inside told him he shouldn't have. Josh drove fast, faster than he should have. The roads blurred, but not as much as his thoughts. Please be okay. Please let me be wrong. When he reached the apartment, the sky had begun to turn orange with the setting sun. Everything looked quiet, too quiet. He rushed inside. "Luke," he called out, breath tight. "I'm back, man. I brought food. Let's talk." Silence. Josh's pulse climbed as he moved down the hallway, heart thudding louder with every step. The bedroom door was cracked open. A breeze stirred the curtains. He pushed it open slowly. Luke was lying on the bed, hands folded over his chest, eyes gently shut. He looked peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. But he wasn't. A single envelope rested on the pillow beside him. Josh's name written across it in Luke's soft, careful handwriting. Josh's hands trembled as he picked it up. He sank to the edge of the bed, unable to breathe as he unfolded the note. "Josh, I asked you to stay. I felt it today, something heavy in my chest, like the end of something I didn't want to end. But I'm not angry. I could never be angry at you. I loved Emma with everything I had. I waited. I believed. I held on to every promise she made, every word she said, but she's gone. I'm not enough anymore, and I can't live knowing the best part of my life walked away and never looked back. Please don't hate her. She needed more than I could give. That doesn't make her cruel. It just makes her human. I had her once, really had her, and those memories, they're mine forever. That's enough. Don't cry too long, brother. Be happy. For me, thank you for everything. Goodbye." Luke. Josh couldn't move. His eyes burned, his chest cracked wide open. The sound that came out of him was barely human, a sob that echoed through the walls of that quiet apartment. He stayed beside Luke for hours, holding the letter, shaking, broken. Outside, the neon lights of Tulsa flickered softly, like they always did. The city moved on, but inside that room, time stood still, and the world lost a light it would never get back. Before moving to the next story, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and share your experience with us in the comments. Dean Carter was 21, a literature major at Red River University, with tired eyes and a leather jacket that always smelled like rain. Quiet, heavy, in a way most people didn't notice until long after he passed. In a college town like Jackson, Tennessee, buzzing with ambition and noise, Dean moved like a shadow. Ava Morgan was 19, a photography student with wild hair and a stubborn heart. She believed small things could save people: late afternoon light, forgotten books, a real smile. It was her second week back when she first saw him, alone by the old stone fountain, staring into the water like he was waiting for something he couldn't name. Without thinking, Ava lifted her camera. Through the lens, the noise faded. There was just Dean and the soft ripple of the fountain behind him. She clicked once, then again. That night, scrolling through her photos, one image stopped her, the boy's face half turned, loneliness etched deep in his features. She named the file, The Boy by the Fountain. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, the air thick with the heavy smell of wet leaves after a morning rain. Ava was sitting on a nearby bench, camera resting in her lap, pretending to study while sneaking glances at him again. The Boy by the Fountain. Dean sat where he always did, head bent low, elbows resting on his knees. Something inside her ached at the sight. Before she could lose her nerve, Ava stood, brushing crumbs from her jeans, and walked toward him. Her heart pounded hard enough to drown out the sounds of the campus around her. She stopped a few feet away. Dean looked up, his eyes catching hers, startled, wary. "Hey," she said, voice softer than she meant. He blinked, like he wasn't sure she was real. Hey." Ava shifted awkwardly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Ava. I take photos sometimes. I hope it's okay, but I've, taken a few of you sitting here." Dean tilted his head, studying her like he wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was small, crooked, but real. "You make me sound like a statue," he said, his voice rough but kind. Ava laughed, a real, breathless sound. "No, not a statue. Just, you look like you're thinking about a million things the rest of us can't see." Dean dropped his eyes, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "Maybe I am." There was a pause, comfortable in a way she didn't expect. "You mind if I sit?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not at all." And just like that, Ava sat beside him. Two strangers separated by inches and 1,000 unspoken stories, the fountain murmuring between them. She didn't know it yet, but today would be the first crack of light in Dean's long, dark sky. Over the next few weeks, sitting by the fountain became their quiet ritual. Sometimes they talked about classes, about favorite books, about the dumb little things that made them laugh. Other times they sat in silence, the kind that didn't feel heavy or awkward, just easy. Ava learned Dean loved the sound of rain, but hated thunderstorms. That he carried a battered notebook everywhere, but never let anyone see inside it. That he wore the same old sneakers, even when the soles started peeling away, because he didn't like letting go of things. She never pushed. She could feel it, the careful way he chose his words, like each one cost him something, the way his eyes sometimes drifted far away, even when he was sitting right next to her. One chilly afternoon, Ava snapped a picture without thinking, Dean laughing at something stupid she said, real and unguarded. When he caught her, he didn't get mad. He just shook his head, smiling that tired smile of his. "You're gonna run out of film on me." "It's digital," she teased, nudging his arm lightly. "I could take 1,000. Dean's face softened, but his eyes turned serious, like there was something heavy he wanted to say, but couldn't. Ava wanted to ask, wanted to lean closer and say, "What are you carrying? Who hurt you so badly you forgot how to breathe easy?" But she stayed quiet. She knew better than anyone that some walls weren't meant to be kicked down. They had to be trusted to open, little by little. Still, deep down, Ava made herself a silent promise as she watched Dean scribbling something into his battered notebook under the fading October sky. I'll stay until he remembers what it feels like to be seen." November rolled in colder than usual, the kind of cold that sank into your bones and made the world feel a little quieter. campus thinned out after classes. The fountain was almost always deserted, except for Dean, and now Ava. One Friday afternoon, she found him sitting there again, but something was different. Dean wasn't scribbling in his notebook or tossing pebbles into the water. He was just staring, a look on his face Ava hadn't seen before. Something raw, empty. She sat down slowly beside him, careful not to say too much too fast. "You okay?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dean blinked, pulling himself back from wherever he had gone. He forced a crooked smile. "Yeah, just long day." But Ava knew better. Some hurts didn't show up in conversation. They lived in the slump of shoulders, the dragging footsteps, the way a smile never quite reached the eyes. She wanted to tell him it was okay to not be okay, that he didn't have to hold the weight of the whole damn world alone. Instead, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a chocolate bar, holding it out without a word. Dean stared at it like she'd handed him a life raft. He laughed, a soft, broken sound, and took it. "You always come prepared, huh?" "Some days call for backup," Ava said, grinning. He unwrapped the chocolate slowly, eating a piece like it hurt to let kindness in. They sat there, the sun sinking lower behind the trees, the world turning golden and bittersweet. And even though Dean didn't say what was really wrong that day, Ava caught a glimpse of it. The shadow curled up inside him, so much deeper than anything words could fix. But she stayed anyway, and Dean, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel so completely alone. Thanksgiving came and went, the campus emptying out as students rushed home to warm houses and busy families. Dean stayed behind. Ava did too, telling herself it was for extra credit projects, but deep down, she knew it was because of him. The Friday after Thanksgiving was sharp and cold, the sky low and heavy, like it might snow. They met at the fountain, like always. Dean was bundled in an old hoodie, shivering but pretending he wasn't. Ava handed him a cup of hot cocoa from the campus cafe without asking if he wanted it. He smiled, that same tired smile, and took it. "Thanks," he said, voice rough. They sat in silence for a while, watching the wind scatter dead leaves across the concrete. Finally, Dean spoke, his words quiet, almost lost in the wind. "You ever feel like you're just waiting?" he asked. "Like no matter what you do, you're stuck? Like the future's coming for you and there's nowhere to hide?" Ava's heart ached at the way he said it, Not angry, not dramatic, just tired, worn thin. Yeah, she said, just as quietly. I have. Dean didn't look at her, but a breath of relief passed through him. Like maybe, just maybe, she understood. He sipped his cocoa, hands trembling slightly. You're not stuck, she said after a while. You're still here. That counts for something. Dean didn't answer. He just stared at the fountain, the water catching the dim gray light, and Ava knew without him saying it. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep being still here. And somehow, Ava knew deep in her chest that whatever Dean was carrying, whatever battle he was fighting, she wasn't just a passerby anymore. She was part of it now. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Ava had forgotten her gloves, and her fingers were numb as she rushed across campus, hoping to catch Dean by the fountain. He wasn't there yet. Only his notebook sat on the bench, half buried under his jacket, flapping a little in the cold wind. Ava hesitated. Dean never left that notebook unattended. She sat down, pulling his jacket closer so it wouldn't blow away, and that's when the notebook fell open, a loose sheet sliding out. Her heart stopped when she saw her name written across the top in shaky handwriting. She hadn't meant to read it, but her hands moved before her mind could stop them. It wasn't just a note, it was goodbye. He had written about the loneliness he carried, about feeling like a ghost in a world too loud for him, about how he didn't want to burden anyone, least of all her. He thanked her for the small kindnesses, the cocoa, the company, the way she had smiled at him when nobody else had. You made me feel seen, Ava, it said. You made the end less lonely. Please don't blame yourself. Her hands shook so badly, the paper nearly tore. Tears blurred her vision as she folded it back, slipping it carefully into the notebook like it had never been touched. Dean was walking up the path now, head down against the wind, completely unaware. Ava wiped at her face quickly and stood, heart racing. She couldn't pretend she didn't know anymore. Dean wasn't just sad. He wasn't just struggling. He was drowning, and he was planning to slip away without anyone noticing. Without her noticing. But she noticed, and she wasn't going to lose him. Not without a fight. That night, Ava couldn't sleep. The note haunted her, each word stitched into her chest like a wound she couldn't stop bleeding. By morning, she made a decision. She wouldn't wait for fate to take him. She wouldn't stand on the sidelines while Dean slipped away. She found him by the fountain. Like always, Dean smiled when he saw her, but it was a brittle smile like glass about to shatter. Ava didn't smile back. Instead, she sat down beside him, closer than usual, so close their knees brushed. "You ever think," she said carefully, "that maybe the people who love you aren't here to fix you?" Dean blinked, caught off guard. "Maybe," she continued, her voice shaking. "They're just here to hold you while you figure it out." For a moment, he didn't say anything. The only sound was the fountain, the wind, the distant hum of campus life moving on without them. Dean lowered his gaze, fiddling with the sleeve of his hoodie. "I'm tired, Ava," he whispered. "So tired." She reached out, her hand trembling, and laid it over his. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "Please, stay." He closed his eyes like the weight of those words was almost too much. "I'm not enough," he murmured. "You are," she said fiercely. "You are enough. You've always been." Dean shook his head, tears slipping down his cheeks before he could stop them. Ava squeezed his hand tighter. "I'll catch you if you fall," she said, and she meant it. Every broken, terrified part of her meant it. Dean didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. It happened 3 days later. Ava had been working late in the dark room, the clock ticking past midnight, when a strange, cold panic gripped her chest. She couldn't explain it, just a feeling, a heavy, suffocating weight that told her something was wrong. Without thinking, she grabbed her jacket and ran. She didn't know where she was going until her feet carried her toward the old fountain. It was there, in the shadows, that she saw him. Dean, standing at the edge of the water, head bowed, hands trembling. Something small and white fluttered to the ground near his feet. A second letter, she realized. A goodbye. "No," Ava gasped, sprinting toward him. Dean turned, startled, his face wet with tears. "Ava," he whispered, "you weren't supposed to be here." She didn't slow down, didn't stop to think. She slammed into him, throwing her arms around his shaking body. "You don't get to leave," she sobbed into his hoodie. "You don't get to leave. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever." Dean broke then, all the walls, all the masks, crumbling in her arms. He collapsed onto the cold stone, pulling her down with him, crying like the broken, terrified boy he was underneath it all. And Ava just held him so tight, like she could stitch him back together with nothing but her arms and her heartbeat. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry." "You're here," she whispered back. That's all that matters. For a long time, they stayed there, two shattered hearts clinging to each other under the winter stars. Dean had almost fallen, but she had caught him. Just like she promised, the days after that night blurred together. Dean didn't go back to the fountain. He didn't go anywhere. Instead, he stayed curled up on the worn couch in Ava's tiny apartment, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender and hope. Ava stayed too, sleeping in the armchair, keeping the lights low, the world quiet. She didn't push, didn't ask for anything he wasn't ready to give. She just stayed. Some days, Dean barely spoke. Other days, he wept without warning, like grief leaking out from cracks too deep to fix. But he was still there. He was choosing, day after painful day, to stay. And Ava chose to believe that was enough. One afternoon, as the winter light slanted through her windows, Dean finally spoke more than a few broken words. "I don't know how to live like this," he said, staring at the ceiling, "like it's okay to be broken." Ava set down the book she wasn't really reading and moved closer. "You don't have to be okay," she said softly. "You just have to be here with me." Dean turned his head, studying her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "You still want me?" he asked, voice hoarse. She smiled, a little sad, a little fierce. "I never wanted anything else." Dean closed his eyes, a single tear slipping free, but for the first time, it wasn't a tear of defeat. It was a tear of beginning. He reached out blindly, and Ava took his hand, squeezing it tight. They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to. In the quiet of that small apartment, in the fading gold of a winter sun, Dean chose to stay, and Ava chose to catch him every single time he needed her to. Spring came quietly that year. The snow melted into soft puddles, and tiny green shoots began pushing through the frozen earth, stubborn and small, just like Dean's healing. It wasn't perfect. Some days, the weight in his chest still felt too heavy. But now, when Dean woke up gasping from the nightmares, Ava was there. She didn't try to fix him. She just turned on the lamp, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "You're safe. I've got you." And slowly, almost painfully, Dean started to believe her. They began building a life together, piece by fragile piece. Late night talks over bad coffee, quiet afternoons with Ava, teaching Dean how to use her camera, laughing when all his photos came out blurry, walking hand in hand through the farmer's market, where Dean would buy her sunflowers even when he insisted he wasn't a flowers kind of guy. Dean even started classes again, taking one photography course, not because he cared about the credits, but because he wanted to see the world the way Ava saw it, bright, beautiful, worth staying for. One evening, after a long, golden day, they sat on Ava's fire escape, watching the sunset spill colors across the sky. Dean turned to her, his heart thudding against his ribs. "You saved me," he said, voice cracking. Ava shook her head. "You saved yourself," she whispered. "I just stood close enough so you wouldn't forget how." Dean smiled then, a real smile, one that reached all the way to his tired, healing eyes. He leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered for the very first time. And Ava, without hesitation, whispered back, "I love you too." Right there, under the bleeding sky, they promised each other the quiet kind of forever, the kind that's fought for, not just found. The stories may come to an end, but the thunder and rain will linger a little longer, keeping you company in the quiet of the night. Sleep well, and good night.